What if I told you that in the heart of West Africa, where villages once went dark after sunset, a quiet revolution is lighting up the night, that in a land scorched by the sun, the very rays that once symbolized hardship are now powering a new era of independence and hope. This isn't fiction. This is Burkina Faso. And under the bold leadership of Captain IBRAHIM Traoré, a solar-powered transformation is underway, not just to flip the light switch, but to flip the script on colonial dependence, energy poverty, and economic exclusion. This is the story of Yeleen, the sun-powered rebellion that the world didn't see coming, but can no longer ignore.
Before the solar panels glinted in the Sahel's sun, before transformers hummed in the heart of villages, there was only darkness, not just of night, but of neglect. In vast stretches of rural Burkina Faso, sunset didn't just mean the end of the day, it meant the end of possibility. Entire communities would vanish into blackness by 6 p.m. as kerosene lamps flickered weakly and cell phone screens became the only source of light. Children tried to finish their homework under the dim, smoky glow of oil lamps, their eyes strained, their futures flickering. In health centers, midwives delivered babies by candlelight. Vaccine fridges sat useless. Sometimes, women in labor had to be carried miles away at night because the local clinic couldn't operate in the dark. For generations, the sun gave them heat, but no power. And without power, there was no progress. Farms produced more, but there was no cold storage. Tomatoes rotted, milk spoiled. Meat couldn't be preserved, forcing villagers to sell cheaply to passing traders or throw it all away. Barbers couldn't cut hair after dark. Tailors couldn't run sewing machines. Phone charging stations, powered by expensive diesel generators, were luxuries few could afford. And as the world moved forward, digitized and connected, thousands of villages remained off the grid both literally and metaphorically. Burkina Faso, one of the sunniest countries on Earth, was paradoxically energy-starved. More than 60% of its population had no access to electricity, and in rural areas. That figure climbed above 80%. But it wasn't just a development issue, it was a sovereignty crisis. The energy that did exist flowed from foreign-owned power stations, imported oil, and fragile transmission lines stretched from neighboring countries. Every kilowatt was a reminder you are not in control. And when the global price of diesel rose, so did school dropouts, untreated infections, and failed businesses. This wasn't just a lack of infrastructure, it was systemic exclusion. Decades of international aid had promised connection but only delivered cables that stopped before the village borders. Donor-funded projects came and went, disconnected from local realities. Panels were installed, but never maintained. Batteries died. Trust faded. And so, for many Burkinabe in the countryside, the dream of electricity had become just that, a dream. Light belonged to the cities. Power belonged to the elites. Until now. Until a new generation of leadership began asking a different question. What if power wasn't a gift from the outside, but a right built from within? The answer to darkness was never cables from Paris. It was light born from the soil, the sun, and the will of a people. In 2022, Burkina Faso stood at a crossroads. The old systems had failed. The diesel generators brought more dependency than development, and the international grid contracts, signed in air-conditioned offices, had never reached the villages that needed them most. That's when something new began to rise, not from Europe, not from foreign investors, but from the heart of Burkina Faso itself. Its name was Yeleen. In the local Muré language, it means light. But Yeleen is not just a project, it is a declaration, led by national energy authorities with technical support from the World Bank and the Green Climate Fund. Yeleen was launched not as charity, but as strategy. Its mission was simple, yet revolutionary. Let every Burkinabe village have the right to flip the switch and know that light will answer.
The initial phase of Yelin targeted 150 remote villages, aiming to connect over 300,000 people to electricity for the very first time. But instead of building more fragile transmission lines from the capital, Yelin flipped the model decentralized, local, solar, smart. Villages didn't have to wait for the national grid to arrive. Instead, solar mini-grids were installed compact, self-sufficient power stations harnessing the endless sun that had once only scorched crops. Where grids weren't possible, solar home systems were distributed full kits including panels, batteries, inverters, and LED lights allowing each household to become its own power station. More than just technology, Yelin was about ownership. Local technicians were trained to install, maintain, and operate the systems. Village cooperatives were empowered to manage distribution and fees. Youth were given scholarships to study renewable energy. Women-led enterprises were prioritized in rural installations. This wasn't just about wires and watts. It was about sovereignty. Because when a village controls its power, it controls its future. And Traoré's government made that message clear. We will no longer beg for development. We will build it with our own sun. The project quickly gained momentum, not because it relied on outside contractors, but because it trusted the intelligence and resilience of rural communities. In just a year, clinics that had been operating by candlelight now stored vaccines in solar-powered refrigerators. In schools, children no longer studied only during daylight. Classrooms glowed late into the night. Markets extended hours. Shops added refrigerators. Tailors powered up their machines. And for the first time in living memory, villagers could charge a phone without walking for miles or paying a day's wage. Yelin became a quiet revolution. No riots, no speeches, just switches, turning on. And perhaps most radically, it wasn't built to make someone rich. Unlike diesel contracts that tied Burkina Faso to foreign oil markets and profit-driven grids, Yelin's economics were designed for inclusivity and sustainability. Tariffs were tailored to rural incomes. Revenues were reinvested into battery replacements, technician training, and expansion to nearby communities. We will not light a village today, only to leave it dark tomorrow. By the end of its second year, Yelin had inspired more than connection. It had inspired confidence. That energy born from sun and sovereignty was now illuminating more than homes. It was lighting up a vision. In Burkina Faso today, light doesn't just chase away the night. It chases away dependency, poverty, and silence. Yelin's impact cannot be measured in megawatts alone. Its real power lies in the human stories behind every light bulb, every clinic, every revived dream. In a small village outside Fada Ngourma, midwife Awa Traoré no longer delivers babies in the dark. Her clinic now has solar-powered lighting, a functioning refrigerator for vaccines and antibiotics, and a fan that keeps patients cool during labor. I used to say prayers before every delivery. Awa whispers, "Now, I just switch on the light and do my job." Down the road, a school that once ended classes by 400 p.m. now runs evening sessions for adult learners, mostly women who never had a chance to study as girls. They sit beneath LED bulbs, holding notebooks with shaky hands, learning to write their names at 45, 50, 60 years old. In the Sahel town of Dori, local entrepreneurs are opening solar-powered phone repair shops, hair salons, and even frozen yogurt stands, all businesses that once seemed impossible in off-grid communities. This is not just about convenience. It's about dignity. A father no longer has to choose between charging his phone and feeding his children. A farmer can check weather forecasts. A mother can refrigerate her baby's medicine. A student can dream of being an engineer, and now, actually study to become one. Yelin is creating more than light. It's creating time, and time is opportunity. When women don't spend 3 hours walking to a generator charging kiosk, they can start small businesses. When children can study past sunset, exam scores go up. When clinics stay open at night, lives are saved. But perhaps the greatest transformation is psychological. Burkinabe are realizing they don't have to wait anymore. They don't have to wait for Paris to fund a grid. They don't have to wait for NGOs to drop off equipment. They don't have to wait for permission to develop. With every new mini-grid, every solar home system installed, comes a new belief. We can power ourselves, and this belief is spreading. Yalene's success has triggered regional interest. Neighboring countries, Mali, Niger, Guinea are now sending delegations to study the Burkinabe model. International observers call it a new era of localized energy justice. But to those living it, it's just normal life, finally possible. And for a country once ignored by the global energy conversation, this is more than progress, it's a reversal of history. They thought energy was a commodity. Traoré made it a weapon for dignity, for sovereignty, for the future. In most of the world, power grids are about consumption. In Burkina Faso, they're about liberation. For decades, the country was shackled by imported fuel, unstable regional grids, and the constant threat of external pressure. One bad contract from Paris and the lights could go out. One supply chain disruption and a hospital would go dark. That kind of energy dependency isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. And IBRAHIM Traoré understood that. He saw what many leaders failed to. Whoever controls your power, controls your politics. That's why Yalene wasn't built as a technical solution. It was built as a geopolitical strategy. By investing in solar, Burkina Faso began cutting the strings. No more diesel dependency. No more IMF-brokered energy reforms tied to debt. No more waiting for foreign-built grids to arrive. Instead, it built a network of power stations that couldn't be sabotaged with a single switch. You can't blockade the sun. You can't sanction sunlight. You can't privatize a people's sky. And that is what makes solar in the context of Burkina Faso more than technology. It is defense. It is resistance. It is freedom. The Yalene program is also strategically placed empowering border villages, conflict zones, and remote regions that had long been left vulnerable not only to poverty, but to extremist recruitment. What happens when a young man in the Sahel can go to a lit classroom instead of joining an armed group? What happens when a mother can charge a phone, store food, and run a small business without moving to the city stability, security, and in the bigger picture, state legitimacy? Yalene shows that Burkina Faso's government can deliver not through handouts, not through colonial leftovers, but through modern, sovereign solutions built for its people, by its people. And as other African nations watch this model rise, a new question emerges. What if we didn't need the West to develop? Yalene doesn't just electrify homes, it electrifies imagination. The imagination of an Africa that powers itself. An Africa where infrastructure is not a gift, but a right. An Africa where the sun, the very symbol of the continent, becomes its most powerful ally. And this is why the West is watching. Because once a country proves it can energize its villages without loans, oil, or permission, other nations might start following. And then the empire of dependency begins to flicker. In a world still clinging to old empires, Burkina Faso has looked up and chosen its own light. The story of Yalene isn't just about electrification. It's about transformation, physical, emotional, and political. Children now dream of becoming engineers because they've seen solar panels rise where there was once only dust. Grandmothers teach by lantern light, watching their grandchildren study past sunset. Farmers run cold storage units, saving harvests that used to rot by midday. And most of all, a country that was once called poor now generates its own power, on its own terms. This is how true freedom begins. Not with flags, not with anthems, but with infrastructure, with access, with control over the essentials of life. And Burkina Faso is leading that revolution quietly, steadily, under its blazing sky. Where others begged for aid, it built with what it had. where others waited for permission. It designed its own destiny. And it did it not with fossil fuel giants, but with sunlight. Not with IMF spreadsheets, but with community trust. Not with colonial nostalgia, but with a pan-African will to rise. Energy is not a luxury. President Traoré once said, "It is the breath of a sovereign people." He understood what few dare to say out loud. In today's world, independence begins with energy. If you don't control your power, someone else controls your future. But now, thanks to Yaline, Burkina Faso has flipped that equation. Each solar panel installed is a vote of confidence. Each village electrified is a declaration of dignity. Each watt produced under the Burkinabe sun is a quiet revolution against centuries of darkness. This is only the beginning. Traoré's government plans to scale the Yaline model, expanding mini-grids, training more solar engineers, integrating rural electrification into national education and health strategies. And the dream doesn't stop at borders. From Niger to Guinea, from Mali to Togo, African nations are watching. Some are already asking, can we do this too? The answer is yes, if Burkina Faso landlocked, embargoed, and underestimated can build this light. So can others. The sun shines for everyone, but only the bold turn it into power.
If this story inspired you, share it. Comment below. Do you believe energy independence is the new form of freedom for Africa? And don't forget to subscribe, because in our next episode, we'll uncover another transformation project that's rewriting the rules of development in West Africa. Burkina Faso is rising not with bombs, not with debts, but with solar panels and sovereign dreams. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay inspired, stay informed, and stay tuned.